The lights are still on in Washington, and the West Wing is humming. In Berlin, American envoys lean over maps and clauses, talking about ceasefire monitors, security guarantees, and how to cork a war that refuses to be bottled. The mood, publicly, is productive. Privately, it's tense. US officials hint at Article 5-style guarantees for Kiev, while the White House signals that 90% of a framework is taking shape. But in this delicate hour of diplomacy, as the pens hover over possible peace, something else just happened, far from the conference halls. The Black Sea stirred, steel shuddered, and a submarine that was supposed to be safe wasn't safe at all. That's the split screen tonight. On one side, Washington and Europe search for the formula to freeze the front. On the other, Ukraine sent a message, not with a speech, but with a shockwave. It's the kind of message you feel in your ribs before you ever see it on a map. Ukraine's security service, the SBU, says it executed a covert strike against the Russian Navy inside Novorossiysk, the Black Sea port Russia has treated like a steel vault since Crimea became a shooting gallery. The target, a Project 636.3 Kilo-class submarine, the Varshavyanka type, Russia's quiet diesel-electric hunter that doubles as a launch platform for Kalibr cruise missiles. The weapon, an unmanned underwater drone that Ukraine calls Subsea Baby, a subsurface cousin in a fast-evolving family of naval drones. The SBU claims the blast critically damaged the boat and knocked it out of service. If true, this is a first. Not the first naval drone strike, the first underwater drone strike on a submarine in port. The kind of line you don't cross until you just did. Let's be precise about what we know and what we don't. Status confirmed by Ukraine's SBU on the record. Russia, no formal comment as of this taping. Independent satellite assessment pending. Major outlets report the claim, note the footage, and say independent verification is still in progress. That's the honest read tonight. This is not rumor mill chatter. It's a public Ukrainian claim now carried by mainstream agencies, with Moscow publicly quiet. So how does an underwater drone get to a submarine that should be safe behind booms, nets, sonar, and patrols? Start with intent. For 2 years, Ukraine has built a navy from scratch, with code, composite hulls, and explosives. The SBU's Sea Baby program began as a surface skimmer, racing under radar and across chop. Now, the Subsea Baby variant brings the fight downward. Lower acoustic signature, shallower wake, and a profile that laughs at the geometry of surface defences. Port barriers work best against what they can see or force to the surface. Shallow draft entries, culverts, and the seams where piers meet shoreline are security's blind spots. A submerged drone doesn't have to win speed, it just has to win patience. And patience can look like silence under a pier you thought was safe. Ukraine has spent months proving it can map harbours, ride currents, and time gate openings with software as much as seamanship. This is the next step. Why does the target matter? The Project 636.3 Kilo-class is a workhorse of Russia's Black Sea fleet. It's an improved Kilo, called Varshavyanka in Russia, famous for quiet running and infamous in Ukraine for firing 3 M14 Kalibr land attack cruise missiles. Those calibers have hammered power plants and railway nodes. They're among the long-reach tools Moscow uses to change the weather in Ukrainian cities. A Kilo in port is usually a bow-up safe bet. Crew rest, maintenance, rearm, hide behind a wall of harbour defences, then slip out to launch missiles from beyond the horizon. That logic only works if the wall still works. Tonight, that assumption looks weaker. One strike doesn't erase a fleet, but barring a Russian denial with detailed evidence, the SBU's operation forces new math in every maritime headquarters from Sevastopol to Shanghai. If underwater drones can infiltrate a heavily defended base like Novorossiysk, then safe in port is no longer safe. The cost curve flips. A multi-million-dollar Kalibr-capable submarine can be disabled by a drone that costs a fraction to produce and launch. And here's the kicker. Even a non-catastrophic hit can sideline a submarine for months. Diagnose, dry dock, source sanctioned parts, certify the hull. Time is a weapon. Sanctions make it heavier. That's how small machines make big warships sit still. Let's zoom out. Since late 2022, Ukrainian sea drones have pushed the Black Sea Fleet out of Sevastopol's comfort zone, forcing relocations, dispersals, and expensive rear area security. Novorossiysk became the safer room in a house under siege. Now the safer room just got a hole in the floor. That changes force posture. Submarines become riskier to berth. Escorts and anti-sabotage units get stretched. Defensive booms and nets, built for surface skimmers, have to be reimagined for the silent approach. The Black Sea Fleet will adapt. More sonar, more barriers, more patrols. But every layer of defense it adds is time and money not spent on offense. And Ukraine only needs to be right occasionally to keep Russia playing goalie. This isn't just about the Black Sea. It's a warning shot at the very idea of harbour sanctuary. Naval architects and base commanders worldwide are watching the footage, reading the parameters, and asking the same questions. What's my detection layer for slow, small, non-magnetic, low acoustic targets? Can my pierside sensors see below the thermocline? How do I patrol the dark water under my own cranes? Every answer costs money. A disciplined drone program only needs ingenuity and resolve. The global lesson is clear. Underwater drones may do to port security what cheap quadcopters did to armoured columns. Turn prestige into vulnerability at scale. Back to the boat. Ukraine says the targeted hull was a Project 636.3, carrying 4 Kalibr launchers. Those are long-reach weapons that keep air raid sirens screaming from Odessa to Lviv. Remove even one launcher from the cycle and you feel it in the tempo of strikes. You also force Russia to reshuffle assets, pull coverage gaps closed, and accept more risk transit between safe water and firing positions. Every reshuffle is an opportunity for more drones to find the next seam. And if a drone can find steel at berth, it can learn to find steel at anchor. Warfare evolves fastest when it becomes software defined. Naval warfare is now there. Now, the last 48 hours beyond the harbour wall. It's been noisy. Reuters reports Russia claiming to have shot down around 130 Ukrainian drones overnight, some headed for Moscow, with temporary flight disruptions around the capital. Ukraine, for its part, expanded the long-reach campaign, hitting oil and gas infrastructure far from the front. Yes, including another strike in the Caspian Sea theatre, part of a pattern designed to sting not just the military, but the war economy that feeds it. These are not rumours, they're on-record claims and confirmations in established wires. Most importantly for the ground fight, there have been no confirmed map-changing territorial shifts in the key axes around Pokrovsk, Kupiansk or Avdiivka in the last day. Battles continue, shells fall, but the lines on the map tonight look a lot like the lines yesterday. That's the shape of late 2025. Deep strikes, hard attrition, political pressure on one side of the ledger, military uncertainty on the other. Diplomatically, Berlin was centre stage. The US side floated security guarantees similar to Article 5, without troops, contingent on a broader deal. Kyiv called talks productive, but pushed back on territorial concessions. Europe's biggest economy signalled it isn't just watching. Germany unveiled a 10-point plan to hardwire Ukraine's defence industry into European structures, from joint ventures to procurement coordination and a liaison shop in Berlin. If you're looking for signals, that's one. While Washington negotiates the lid, Berlin is building the pot. Let's talk craft for a minute. How do you actually execute an underwater strike in a harbour? You start outside the perimeter with reconnaissance. AIS gaps tell you when the port sleeps. Drone-borne lidars map pilings and seawalls. Recon teams parse tide tables and ship movement. Then you ride in, slow. Magnetic and acoustic signatures are tuned below threshold. The software does the rest. Waypointing, obstacle avoidance, and, if comms jam, an autonomous run-in using inertial navigation and shoreline feature matching. You hide in clutter. In the Soviet era, harbors were built to confuse torpedoes, not micro-drones. Modern barriers are effective against boats, swimmers, and known sabotage techniques. They are less effective against small, slow, subsurface platforms that can park for hours and decide when to wake the harbour. If you feel a knot in your stomach as a naval officer listening to that, you're not alone. This is the nightmare brief, and that's precisely why it's happening. What does this mean for the Black Sea Fleet tomorrow morning? Schedules will slip. Anti-saboteur units with DP-64 grenade launchers and diver detection sonars will pull double shifts. Minesweeper-class hulls will spend more time patrolling inside the wall than outside. A Kilo returning from patrol may now wait at sea until a security sweep clears the pier. That in turn creates a vulnerable window in transit. And every time a commander chooses safety in delay, Ukraine steals operational tempo without firing a shot that day. It's the same math that made Russia move ships out of Sevastopol. Asymmetry isn't about winning every clash, it's about changing the cost of doing business, and cost matters. Sanctions were already eroding Russia's maintenance pipeline. Every damaged submarine is a logistics problem with a propaganda echo. Even if the hull is repairable, a long lead part becomes a strategy problem, not just a workshop job. The Kremlin can spin silence into calm, but the fleet's maintenance roster doesn't lie. And if you're counting Kalibr salvos per month, you'll see the impact in the cadence, not the headlines. A missed strike window here, a reduced volley there, those are strategic ripples concealed within the daily noise. The broader war threat is just as critical. In the past 48 hours, the drone duel escalated. Russia's overnight swarms aimed to saturate air defenses and stress Ukrainian cities. Ukraine replied with long-range strikes against platforms that fund the war. This is economics by explosion. Ukrainians hear it as sirens. Russians feel it as refinery slowdowns and nervous port captains. Neither side is out of ideas. Both are testing the other's depth. But remember, hard war meets hard diplomacy. The White House is pressing for a deal. Kyiv wants guarantees with teeth. In that environment, a single underwater hit that complicates Russia's missile launch rhythm is a line of leverage at the table, subtle, deniable, and very real. Let's spend a moment on the equipment, because names matter. The target, Project 636.3 Kilo-class, Varshavyanka. It is the Black Sea Fleet's quiet striker, built to fire Kalibr cruise missiles and carry torpedoes via 6 533mm tubes. It's not a museum piece, it's a modern diesel-electric boat that's harassed Ukraine's cities. The weapon, the SBU's Subsea Baby underwater drone, a new variant in the Sea Baby line of unmanned systems that Kyiv has openly evolved over the past year, from long-range surface strikes to subsurface entry. And the payload? Ukraine does not show the configuration, but we can assume the profile. Focused blast to break steel, not to paint fireballs for social media. When the blast is underwater, the harbour hears it before the camera does. Is this historically unprecedented? Multiple outlets call it the first such underwater drone strike on a submarine in port. That matters in doctrine and in deterrence. It shreds the assumption that diesel boats can rest within the cordon while corvettes stand watch. It suggests a world where a naval base is no longer a fortress, but an obstacle course that the smallest attacker can finish. Every admiral studying this will reach the same grim conclusion. The only safe harbour now is the one you can sense and sanitize continuously in all dimensions, with sensors you probably don't own yet. A quick reality check on the front. In the immediate window, no confirmed breakthrough or collapse at Pokrovsk, Kupiansk, or Avdiivka. Claims swirl, some dramatic, some apocalyptic, but the cartographers haven't moved their pencils. If that changes, it will be because someone found a logistics artery, or the winter freeze locked in enough ground to shove. Not today, not in the last 48 hours. Which is why the war leans more than ever on drones, air defense, and deep reach strikes to shape tomorrow's map before anyone redraws it. Meanwhile, Europe is positioning for the long game, Berlin's 10-point package isn't just applause for Kyiv, it's an industrial handshake, joint ventures, procurement harmonization, a liaison hub in Berlin. These are moves you make when you expect the threat to outlast the news cycle. In other words, while one set of negotiators chases a ceasefire line, another set of officials is laying steel rails for a defense economy that can survive the next shock. That duality, talk peace, build strength, isn't hypocrisy, it's strategy. So what now for Novorossiysk? Expect more buoys, more booms, and the return of old-school anti-frogman patrols with new-school sensors. Expect the Black Sea Fleet to split its assets even further, keeping fewer high-value platforms in any one place. Expect the quiet arrival of commercial sonar arrays at military piers, the kind of gear oil majors use to watch for swimmers, now repurposed for anything that moves beneath. And expect Ukraine to look for the next seam, because that's how asymmetric campaigns work. Strike, learn, iterate, strike again. It's chess with explosives, where the pawns can check the king. If you're Russia, the immediate question is how to salvage capacity. Kalibr launchers don't grow on trees. You can shift firing tasks to surface ships, but those have learned to fear wake chasers too. You can push more strikes from aircraft, but your bomber bases are finally feeling their own vulnerability as Ukrainian reach grows. Every shift exposes a different flank. Every adaptation is a new line item on a stress budget that's already red. That's the power of a well-timed, well-placed hit. It doesn't just bend metal. It bends schedules, psychology, and policy. And if you're Ukraine, this is validation. And a warning. Validation that a country without a blue water fleet can still write naval history with clever engineering and ruthless execution. Warning that the other side will learn, copy, and counter. Because the future is unmanned, and the sea, like the sky, is no longer a sanctuary. The side that treats software updates like ammunition will dictate the tempo. The side that treats harbors like battlefields will own the night. Strategically, this strike, if its reported effects hold, signals a potential shift in the war's next phase. Deep strikes on infrastructure will continue, but disabling the platforms that launch Kalibr cruise missiles multiplies the effect. It shortens the enemy's reach and forces a doctrine rethink at the fleet and theatre levels. Combine that with European industrial reinforcement and the diplomatic grind in Berlin, and you get a triangle of pressure: military, economic, and political. That's how wars end or change shape, not with one big speech, but with 100 small changes that make the old plan too expensive to keep. However, even on a conservative reading, this is a pivotal point. Underwater drones just kicked the harbour gates open. The Black Sea Fleet, already pressured out of Sevastopol, now has to look over its shoulder, inside the one port it trusted. Kalibr salvos may wobble. Insurance underwriters will read the fine print twice. And naval base commanders from the Mediterranean to the Pacific are taking uncomfortable notes. While diplomats talk, the water keeps moving. And tonight, the water moved in Ukraine's favour. Stay with us. The stakes are higher than one explosion and deeper than one harbour. What happened at Novorossiysk could be the opening chapter of a new naval playbook, one where cheap, smart, and silent can reach past concrete and steel. If that's the future, then every fleet will need a new kind of shield. And every viewer who cares about how wars actually change needs to keep watching, because the next shock might not come from the sky. It might come from the quiet beneath your feet.